Good evening. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Issue Forum on the consolidation of the Mingus Union High School District and the Cottonwood-Oak Creek Elementary School District on the November 3rd general election ballot. Our forum is being hosted by the League of Women Voters Greater Verde Valley, and my name is Mary Chiquen, a member of the League. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization which envisions a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. In these new times, we do not have an audience, but Verde Valley TV is live streaming and videotaping our forum. The video will play on Sparklight, channel 1056, Sudden Link, channel 2, and the Verde Valley TV for YouTube channel, as well as social media outlets and websites. The purpose of this forum is to inform and to educate ourselves about the proposed Mingus Union High School District and Cottonwood-Oak Creek Elementary School District consolidation. Over the last several weeks, we have solicited and gathered questions via email from the public to present to the proponents and opponents of the issue. The goal for tonight's forum is fairness, civility, and engagement. Our timekeeper for this evening's forum is Kevin Cook. His role is to keep us all on time. He has 3 signs: a 1-minute sign, a 30-second sign, and a stop sign. He will raise the 1-minute sign and then the 30-second sign to tell you how much time you have left. Finally, he will raise the stop sign to signal you to end your sentence. Time limits on presentations and responses will be strictly observed. And if you keep going, I get to stop you. We ask 4 things of our presenters this evening: be respectful of each other's points of view, speak your mind freely, do not engage in personal attacks, and please do not interrupt one another. The forum this evening is going to consist of 4 parts. Part 1 is a brief overview, which I will present on the key points of the consolidation and what the voters need to know on the ballot. Part 2 is a 10-minute presentation from each of the opponents and proponents of the measure. Part 3 is questions from the community. Each side will have 2 minutes to answer each question. We received a number of excellent questions in response to our requests. I invite the community to contact the speakers directly if your issue or question was not addressed in tonight's forum. And Part 4 will consist of closing remarks. Each side will have 2 minutes to make final statements for the audience. Now I would like to introduce our speakers. Speaking in support of consolidation this evening are Andy Grosetta and Denise Kennedy. Speaking in opposition to the consolidation are Amy Badger and Stephen Renard. Thank you all for being here this evening.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. I would like to begin now with a brief overview on the consolidation. As a point of reference, there are actually 4, the consolidation has significant impact on the governance and taxing authority of 4 existing school districts. Those are Mingus Union High School, which is 9 through 12, Cottonwood-Oak Creek Elementary School, which is K through 8, Clarkdale Jerome School, which is K through 8, and the Valley Academy for Career and Technical Education, VACT, which provides instruction to the public school high school students. So who votes on the consolidation? Mingus Union High School District voters, which includes Cottonwood-Oak Creek Elementary School District and Clarkdale Jerome School District, will receive a ballot with a consolidation question to decide if Mingus Union and Cottonwood-Oak Creek should consolidate to form a new unified district representing K through 12. Also, Cottonwood-Oak Creek Elementary School District voters will receive a ballot with a consolidation question to decide if Mingus Union and Cottonwood-Oak Creek should consolidate to form a new united school district serving K through 12 students. The specific language for the voters in the Cottonwood-Oak Creek Elementary School District and the Clarkdale-Jerome School District will read, to determine if Mingus Union High School District and Cottonwood-Oak Creek Elementary School District shall consolidate to form a unified school district from and after June 30th, 2021. Voters in Cottonwood-Oak Creek Elementary School District only receive the ballot question to determine if Mingus Union High School District and Cottonwood-Oak Creek Elementary School District shall consolidate to form a unified school district from and after June 30th, 2021. So what happens if the vote is approved? First, Mingus Union High School and Cottonwood-Oak Creek Elementary School Districts will no longer exist. A new unified school district will be formed within the boundaries of the Oak Creek Elementary School District, and a new governing board will also be constituted. Relating to the Clarkdale-Jerome School District, it will remain a separate district and will not be a part of the new unified school district. It will have a different designation for funding since it will not belong to the Union High School District. The governing board will determine how the education of its students is provided, including its high school students. Also, voters in Clarkdale-Jerome will not be eligible to serve on or vote for the governing board in the new unified school district. Regarding VACT, we'll have a governing board as it does now, but it will only have 4 representatives since there will only be 4 unified districts. What does Arizona law require? What the law requires in the voting is that a majority of those voting in the Mingus Union, which also includes a majority voting in Cottonwood-Oak Creek, and a majority voting in Clarkdale-Jerome as Mingus Union voters, and a majority of those voting in Cottonwood-Oak Creek as Cottonwood-Oak Creek voters must vote yes in order for this consolidation to pass. What does a yes vote mean? A yes vote means that Mingus Union and Cottonwood-Oak Creek schools are abolished, the districts are abolished. It takes the portion of the Mingus Union boundary that does not include the Clarkdale-Jerome boundary and consolidates it with all of the Cottonwood-Oak Creek boundary. It forms a new unified school district within the current boundary of Cottonwood-Oak Creek. It requires Clarkdale-Jerome to determine how its high school students are educated, because the automatic transfer to Mingus Union will no longer exist. It impacts Clarkdale-Jerome School District only as it relates to its high school students. And finally, as said before, it reduces the VACT governing board from 5 to 4 members due to the reduction in the number of districts. Also then, what does a no vote mean? A no vote maintains the current status. Mingus Union High School District will continue current operations, serving grades 9 through 12 high school students in its boundaries. Cottonwood-Oak Creek Elementary School District will continue current operations, serving K through 8 students in its boundaries. Clarkdale-Jerome School District will continue current operations, serving grades K through 8 students in its boundary and sending its high school students to Mingus Union. And VACT will continue to have 5 members on its governing board because there will be 5 districts. As a reminder, if the consolidation plan is approved, it goes into effect on June 30th of 2021. Finally, if you would like more information, I invite you to visit the Yavapai County Education Service Agency website, where you can read the 55-page document that goes into a great deal of details about the consolidation and what it will mean to you as a voter and to your students who are in these specific districts. Thank you. Now I would like to introduce our speakers, other speakers for this evening. The order has been determined prior to the forum in a random selection process. As a reminder to each of our speakers, each side will have 10 minutes to present why or why not they support the school district consolidation. We will begin our presentations with the opposition to the school district consolidation, and that will be Amy Badger and Stephen Renard.
Thank you so much for having us here today. As stated earlier, my name is Stephen Renard. This is Amy Badger, and we represent the Save Our Independent School Districts PAC. And we are here to explain why we believe that a no vote on consolidation is an affirmative vote for the future of education in the Verde Valley. In the commentary to the Verde Independent last Friday, the Consolidation Commission stated that our opponents, that's us, are throwing out numbers and other distractions to confuse you, the voters. Well, challenge accepted. Let's talk numbers. First number, negative $453,366. That was the likely day one deficit predicted by the financial managers of both districts in the 2018 report. This remains the most detailed and, in fact, the only attempt at investigating the finances of this smaller combined district. What's important to note is that despite showing a deficit of nearly $500,000, this report has several costs that weren't counted, such as capital assets split for Clarkdale-Jerome School District purchased with its tax dollars for a district it will no longer be part of. As Clarkdale-Jerome has voted for bonds and their tax dollars have purchased capital assets for Mingus Union High School District, they are entitled to recompense for that money. While that number in 2018 represented a proposed equalization of teacher salaries, it did not include an equalization of classified salaries. It also does not include costs associated with consolidation. Attorney's fees, legal fees, rebranding, new signage, taking the word union off of everything associated with Mingus, so on and so forth. In all fairness, this report has been attacked as being too old, not dealing with current numbers. So I took the liberty of looking at the teacher equalization costs, which were then estimated to be between $600,000 and $700,000. The actual report uses the number $650,000. Readjusted with today's average salaries, and that's not accurate, it's actually the salaries of 2019, so it does not include any pay increases received for the fiscal year of 2021. That first day deficit then becomes approximately $1 million. That's right, $1 million. The new district would have to come up with to equalize salary. That's day one, and that's a recurring cost. So it's year after year after year. Yeah. With all due respect, this just isn't feasible. When we talk about salary equalization in a new district, so you're talking $1 million price tag, and the money just isn't there. So something's got to give. And this means, with a reasonable degree of certainty, that high school teachers will get paid less. Smaller salaries, smaller 301 payments, smaller paycheck week in, week out. And this just isn't about teacher pay. It is about the students. The most crucial tool for student achievement is a quality, engaged teacher in the classroom. That teacher which will be remembered as a driving force in that child's life for years to come. The fact that teachers are the most important tool we have, more important than curriculum, technology, or programs, means that hiring and retaining of quality teachers should be the primary focus of any district. Simply put, negatively impacting pay is not a way to make this happen. We live in a state ranked 45th in average teacher salaries, with over 3,600 current classrooms lacking a qualified teacher and over 2,000 classrooms lacking a teacher at all. Lowering teacher salaries, freezing their salaries, slowing the growth of their salaries in this environment will almost certainly bring that statewide teaching crisis crashing into our backyard with devastating consequences. Are there other ways to save $1 million? Sure. They might include reducing staff, that's firing people, cutting programs such as sports or arts, increasing the cost of participation in those, so-called pay-to-play, closing schools and selling property, or reducing non-core spending. All of these would have devastating effects upon the area's educational future. So here's another number, 60.1%. That's the percentage of the Mingus budget spent on classroom instruction. That is 6.8% higher, or 8.6% higher than its peer group. Another number, 122. That's the number of students per Mingus Union High School administrator. That's approximately half the number of administrators as the state average. 2. Okay, 2. Go ahead. That's the number of governing board presidents who, as private citizens, have spoken out against consolidation. And this next one is really important to me. It means a lot to me, 17%. Go ahead. That's the percentage of our students who come from Clarkdale-Jerome School District. That means if this passes, it's 17% of our families who would no longer be part of our union district, 17% of the Mingus community who would lose the right to vote on school governance, and 17% of our community who would be expected to send their children to the new district, send their tax dollars to the new district, but have their voices muted. Now, these are just some of the most important numbers that we were trying to impart to you. So, in response to these numbers, what has the Consolidation Committee's response been? What's their plan? As they attack the reports and facts as not the only way to do it, well, they'll say the new board will figure it out. They say, don't worry, we'll make it work. They say, this community supports our schools and we won't let this fail. They say, that's not the only way to do it. But they say this without supplying any alternative, let alone a fact-based, researched, well-reasoned alternative. The long and the short of it is that they want us to gamble on hope, gamble on a maybe, gamble on our children's future, and respectfully, in my opinion, such a gamble is unacceptable. What the pro-consolidation group has stated is that there are savings to be had. Administrative savings, decreased property taxes, economy of scale. What did Tim Carter say just yesterday when asked about these savings in relation to a shrinking tax base? He said the general rule of consolidation was that if you really want to save money, you close schools, sell the property in the buildings. He went on to say that no one was discussing this and that without such closures, everything else is pretty much a wash. Those are his words, not mine. So, what do these numbers tell us? Where do they leave us? We could very well be looking at $1 million budget shortfall on day one, that these savings being touted range from non-existent to a wash, that we would be tampering with a school that is already beating its peer groups both academically and fiscally. And we would do all of this with a shrinking tax base, throwing in the consequence of alienating the Cottonwood-Jerome School District communities in Clarkdale-Jerome and the Yavapai Nation. So why a no vote? A no vote keeps this union of multiple districts together. It stops this idea that we should be gambling with our children's education future on hopes and maybes. It shows support that our local districts have our students' best interest at heart and are qualified and prepared to make those day-to-day decisions to best serve their individual independent district students. It also allows the citizens of Clarkdale-Jerome to maintain their vote on how their children's high school gets run. We believe that a no vote is better for our kids, better for our schools, and better for our communities. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Stephen. And now we will turn it over to our speakers in support of the consolidation.
Okay, my name's Denise Kennedy, and I'm going first. And on our PowerPoint today, it says, why consolidate Mingus High School and Cottonwood-Oak Creek school districts? Well, when we as a committee went out to gather signatures in our communities, one of the questions that we frequently got from residents was, why are there 3 school districts here? You know, why so many? And so I thought, well, that's a great place to begin. Why do we have 3 school districts? So going back and looking at some history, over 100 years ago in the Verde Valley, we had very distinct and several separate communities that were able to support different individual school districts. Jerome was an active mining town with a population of 15,000 people. They had their own separate elementary and high school. Clarkdale was just being drawn out and on paper and yet to be built. Centerville was a vibrant community serving its residents, and they had their own school. Clemenceau was another smelter community with its own school as well. Cottonwood had their own K-12 for residents operating dairies and businesses, and Cornville was an agricultural community growing crops and raising livestock for additional supports for those operations, and they also had their own school. So 40 years later, or 60 years ago, the landscape of our community had drastically changed. Clarkdale, Jerome, and Centerville had experienced such great population decline that they consolidated and unified into a sole K-8 elementary school. Cottonwood, and did I say Centerville or Cottonwood there? Oh, well, anyway. Cottonwood, Clemenceau, and Cornville also combined their efforts into a single elementary school, and they had K-8 kids. Now, all 6 of these communities came together to combine resources to form a union high school, which we have today, as no community individually had sufficient children to open a high school. That happened in 1958, and so 58 years later, here we are. Times have indeed changed. Fortunately, we have enhanced technology, transportation, and other educational resources to better and more efficiently educate our students. And our communities have changed from mining and copper smelting and commercial communities into tourism and senior living support. Our student population and enrollment is once again experiencing decline. It is projected to continue to decline as we have this in-migration of population of senior citizens who have already raised their families, and we have younger families or couples living here that are not yet ready to raise their families, to have children. So now with open enrollment, charter schools, private schools, online education, homeschooling, and with the COVID dilemma, we could see a continuous decline in our public school enrollment. And another thing to consider is that our sister community, Sedona, has experienced a 50% decline in their public school enrollment. So, Mr. Garcetta?
Yes, thank you. Questions have been asked, why are we doing this? And the bottom line is we want to improve the education for our students in our community. We want to make our school districts and all of the kids who are enrolled there to have a better opportunity of learning. And so those of us in the community put together a campaign to consolidate these schools. I have been asked this evening to address the cost savings and budgeting and administrative and operational costs. If you'll refer to the slide regarding administrative costs, Robin, The administrative costs combined between both districts is just a little over $2 million. Cottonwood-Oak Creek is about $2 million, Mingus is about $1 million, and so $3,031,000 and some change. If you took a 10% reduction in those administrative costs, those of us in the private sector, we reduce operating expenses anywhere from 5, 10, 15, 20, 30%, whatever it takes to be more effective and provide a service most cost effectively. We think that it's reasonable to ask for a 10% reduction in administrative costs. And if you look at that, that's approximately $300,000. If you apply a 15% savings or reduction in costs, that's approximately $450,000. Now, that's just dealing with administrative costs where there's duplications, where we have 2 superintendents, 2 business managers, 2 curriculum directors, 2 food service directors, and it goes on and on and on. And if we can eliminate some of those positions, take those dollars and reinvest them in the classroom on the students where that money needs to be spent. If we look at plant operations, that number is approximately a little over $3 million, a combined number between both districts. And if you go through the same exercise, whether it's a 10% reduction or a 15% reduction, you're looking at a savings anywhere from $300,000 to $460,000. And those dollars can be reallocated to the classroom. Now, there's been a lot of discussion in this community about equalizing teacher salaries. The teachers at Mingus, on the average, make $10,000 more per teacher than the teachers at Cottonwood-Oak Creek. David Snyder, who's the business manager at Cottonwood-Oak Creek School in 2018, did a study, and to equalize salaries in 2018-19 school year, that figure was $270,000. It's more now because teachers have received increases from the state, but as you can see with the numbers I've shared with you, anywhere from $600,000 to $900,000 can be reallocated to not only teacher salaries, but also to add staff, to reduce classroom size or class size, enhance existing programs such as fine arts, drama, music, FFA, create new programs that they don't have at the high school. Add more money to professional development for our teachers. They're our most important resource at all of these schools working with our students. So we're looking at ways where these dollars can be reallocated to be better spent on our students. The impact to our taxpayers, what is the impact? If you'll refer to pages 8 and 9 in the voters' information pamphlet that was so nicely done by Tim Carter, our Yavapai County School Superintendent. Look to the right column on both pages. One page is for Clarkdale-Jerome School District. The other one is for Cottonwood-Oak Creek. You will notice that taxes will decrease both in the Clarkdale-Jerome District, which will remain a separate district, and the newly unified district. There is no tax consequence. It is a positive. Where do these numbers come from? They came from Renee Raskin at Tim Carter's office. They came from the Arizona Tax and Research Association. They came from the Arizona School Business Officials Association. And they were also confirmed by and reviewed by the Arizona Department of Education. I think we ought to listen to the people who are experts in school finance. Thank you. Denise?
Oh, sure. Have 2 minutes? Okay, one of the biggest moves that we have is we'd like to see an aligned curriculum, alignment between the schools, like K-12. And the way you do that is you have vertical alignment and you also have horizontal alignment. When you go and you look at the auditor's report for student achievement, when you look at Cottonwood-Oak Creek, they have a K-8 series of grades so that they can align vertically as well as horizontally. And I had a definition up there, but I'm not going to have time to do it. But when you look at the Mingus school district, you can see that by us not being able to align our curriculums, that we actually have a drop in our student performance. Overall, Cottonwood had 45%. And Mingus had 30. Now, do we have great teachers? Yes, we have great teachers in both school districts. So this isn't about the capability of staff. What we're talking about is an alignment of curriculum both vertical and horizontal, in order to improve student achievement.
"30 seconds. I will talk a little bit about the impact of the Clarkdale-Jerome District, and if we run out of time, hopefully it'll come up during the questions. The impact, I want to make it clear to everybody that this group, this committee, went to the Clarkdale-Jerome School Board and asked them whether or not they wanted to be part of the consolidation process. This was 3.5 years ago. That school board are the representatives and elected by the taxpayers and citizens in the Clarkdale-Jerome communities. They said no. We respected their decision, and we went on to try to consolidate both Mingus Union High School and Cottonwood-Oak Creek, of which both district offices are with less than 2.5 miles, located in the same town here in Cottonwood. Now, Tim Carter.
You're done.
Stop.
Thank you, Denise and Andy. I'm sure we'll get to some of those questions as we move through the audience questions. And I understand there is a lot of details and information that we would like to share this evening.
That's true.
So now we will get to the community questions. As a reminder, each side will have 2 minutes to answer each question. Also, for ease of moving this forward, I have categorize the questions. So hopefully that will make answering the questions a little easier as we move forward. We will start with the support side in the first question. And that question is, cost savings of a consolidated district have been suggested as a benefit of school consolidation. What are the cost savings, if any, do you see or don't you see?
I just shared that with the audience. If you look at both the administrative savings involved and also plant operations, if you look at each discipline on their own, at 10% cost savings would amount to about $300,000 that could be reallocated into the classroom. If you use a 15% reduction in both categories, both plant operations and administrative services, you run up to $450,000. And so we're looking at that pot of money to be reallocated to the classroom. It's up to the new board. They could equalize teacher salaries. They could do that over in 1 year. There's enough money to do that in 1 year. They can phase it in over a period of years. As I mentioned before, you can enhance your present programs in these schools. You can grow new programs. You can encourage more staff development, professional development among the teachers. So there's a lot of different areas that this money can be used for. The bottom line, folks, is we want the money to be spent in the classroom where it needs to be spent.
Thank you, Andy. Stephen and Amy?
The statement that there are savings to be had boils down to, we'll just cut 10 to 15% of these budgets. Cut 10 to 15% off administration. Cut to 10 to 15% off of plant operation cost. If it's that easy, why isn't it being done already? Why aren't these schools cutting 10 to 15%? Mingus Union High School, as stated, is already running extremely lean. We have lower administrative costs than our peer groups. We have fewer administrators than other similarly situated schools. We have half the number of administrators per that number of students as the average place in Arizona, as the average school district in Arizona. The reason that we just can't cut 10 to 15% of administration, that we just can't cut 10 to 15% from our plant operation costs, things like air conditioning, is because if that money was to be cut, students would suffer. You have hardworking people in both of these administrative offices, and the belief that you can just sit there and take 2 people's job, both full-time, and expect 1 person to do it. Mingus tried that a couple years ago in an effort to save cost. They tried to make 1 person both the superintendent and the principal. Halfway into the year, that proved untenable because there was just too much work for 1 person to do. If we sit there and we expect 1 person to just sit there and do both persons' jobs, we are going to be looking at disaster. The reason we can't just willy-nilly cut 10 to 15% from these budgets is because there isn't 10 to 15% to be cut.
Thank you. Also, there probably will be redundancy in some of the questions I'm asking, but we have tried to collect all of the questions that the community provided, and we wanted to try and ask as many of them as we could. The next question, and we will start with Stephen and Amy on this one. Do you feel that the consolidated district could budget more wisely than current school districts, and why?
No. In all fairness, and I think this really just does go back, and I won't need anywhere near the full 2 minutes. This does go back to what I just said. I think that both districts, or all three districts, Clarkdale, Jerome, Cottonwood-Oak Creek, and Mingus Union, are doing their best to squeeze every penny out of every dollar and to put that money where it best serves the students. And the belief that we can shrink the tax base, shrink the school district, and all of a sudden have $700,000 to come in by just cutting 10 to 15% without showing where that would come from, what jobs would be lost. How are we going to save 10 to 15% from plant operations? Plant operations, like I said, things like air conditioning, heating, that has nothing to do with consolidation. If there's 10 to 15% to be saved in plant operations, I think it would be absurd that the schools aren't doing it right now. Because that's money that could be saved, that's money that could be put to students right now. Nothing to do with consolidation. That has to do with how individual school sites are run.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I can tell you that as long as you have separate school districts, separate entities, then it's going to be hard to save money, harder than if we consolidated into a K-12. With a K-12, you would be forming a 3,300 student school district, a school district of 3,300 kids. And so the thing with that is considered a medium-sized district. If you look at other districts around our state, it's not a large district at all. And certainly for our area and the population surrounding our area, it's a reasonable thing. If you eliminate the salary of a superintendent, if you have a curriculum director who can work with grades K through 12 to align your curriculum and in-service teachers and staff on that, that's going to be saving money, and you're getting improvements with that. Every one of our school districts have food service, one food service director instead of two. Now, do they make oodles of money? No. But just consolidating the services down into one, or to streamlining that, will bring results. Do you want to add to that, Andy?
Yes, looking at purchasing school supplies, when you buy anything in bulk, you get a discount on purchasing the supplies. So whether it be pencils, paper, computers, whatever it may be, desks, chairs, you receive a substantial discount. I asked the question, most all of the districts, there are two districts in the Verde Valley that are already unified, Sedona and Camp Verde. Every community that surrounds the Verde Valley have a unified district. They're operating very well. Here in the Valley, we have 7 school districts with a population of 70,000 people. So I think, yes, the answer to the question is yes, we can operate much more wisely, be much more cost-effective in purchasing supplies, and then sharing with what Denise said, it is the right decision.
Thank you. The next question. One of the issues is the difference in teacher salaries and benefits between Cottonwood-Oak Creek and Mingus Union High School. What might happen to teacher salaries with the consolidation, if anything? And we're starting with Andy and Denise.
Okay. Well, I can say that there is a state statute that says salaries of teachers cannot be frozen the first year. And as we mentioned before, there will be an opportunity for a new governing board to work out how that plan can look. It can, as Andy mentioned before, it could happen over a period of time. This doesn't necessarily just come like that. When you look at the discrepancy in teacher salaries, it's true, there is a huge gap. Cottonwood-Oak Creek teachers are the lowest paid teachers in the Verde Valley. Clarkdale Jerome are the highest paid teachers. Next would be the Mingus teachers, and then our teachers in Cottonwood. So, you know, you would have to work that out, the governing board would, as far as how they would reallocate that funds, how that stuff is going to come together, how the funding and the programming would come together.
I just would like to add to that. Excuse me, we strongly believe that elementary school teachers should be equally paid as their high school peers. And why aren't they? There's a $10,000 discrepancy. As Denise said, it's going to be up to the new school board. We have found ways, examples where the new school board can look at different programs in the districts and to come up with a cost savings and to reallocate those dollars back into the classroom. And so many people feel, and I strongly feel, that a young child in elementary school, that teacher who's teaching that student is very critical and important in developing the life style and that young student before that student moves up into middle school, junior high, and high school. So we strongly believe that the elementary school teachers should be paid the same as high school teachers.
Thank you. Amy?
I just want to say, to begin with, that I strongly believe that all Arizona educators deserve a higher salary. It was for that reason in 2018 I joined thousands of other educators at the state capitol to advocate for education. Unfortunately, Arizona continues to remain at the bottom of the list in state funding, and we feel that impact here at home. Do I believe Cottonwood-Oak Creek school teachers deserve a higher wage? Absolutely, without a doubt. We will never argue that they deserve a lower salary. However, this consolidation plan does not provide a feasible way to equalize those salaries in an equitable manner. To suggest that we can raise Cottonwood-Oak Creek school teacher salaries based on administrative savings, the numbers simply don't align. The cost is far more expensive. Because of that, after year one, when those hard decisions do have to be made, this new board will have a difficult decision. One, they can choose to maintain the promises that were made to the Cottonwood-Oak Creek school teachers and find a way to increase salaries. And the only way that they're going to be able to do that is by reducing the salaries of the high school teachers. So you will promise an increase to one group while reducing the salaries of another group. And to me, that does not seem like a fair or equitable solution.
Thank you. And the next question, we will begin with Stephen and Amy. What is the projected per student spending amount with consolidation versus the current situation?
I'm going to be honest, I don't have that number directly in front of me. I know that the current spending, the last numbers we have are for the fiscal year 2018-2019. I believe that Mingus is at approximately 4,500. I see Andy actually has the sheet out in front of him, so he'll actually be able to give you the exact dollar amounts. Sure. And I think that that's what we want. We want facts. We want those numbers to be as accurate as possible. We want every single voter out there to have as much information as possible in order to make that decision. Again, my assumption, I think 4,500, 3,500, it's somewhere in that range for both school districts. I believe that Mingus has a slightly higher per student spending than Cottonwood-Oak Creek, and I am not, and I believe that, again, what they were saying earlier is true. Clarkdale-Jerome actually has a higher one still. I do not see that needle shifting tremendously going through consolidation. When other districts have consolidated, there has been a complete lack of administrative savings. You don't see these savings that are promised existed for what I was saying earlier. Those jobs just can't disappear because there's work to be done. So even though you may only have one superintendent, now you have to hire an executive secretary or 2 assistant superintendents to do the work, because you just can't take all of that work, have one person do it. And so in the long run, when you take a look at these other districts that have consolidated, their per pupil spending doesn't increase. Their administrative costs do not decrease. And that has been what has happened again and again and again, so much so that back in 2008, when there were consolidation talks going on, when this community voted no on it, there was actually a warning.
Thank you, Stephen. Andy and Denise.
Well, according to the Auditor General's report for 2019, it looks like Mingus is per student spending is $9,017, and for Cottonwood-Oak Creek, that sum is $9,401. I think it's an important thing to also bear in mind here when you're talking about money allocated to classrooms and classroom spending. How that is calculated according to the state is based on how much teachers are paid. So when you see that more money is going into the classroom in a school district, it's because their teachers are being compensated more fairly and more, for their work. So to say that somebody has low spending, low funding in the classroom, you've got to take into account the money they're working with and how that money is calculated in there. So that's one of the things I wanted to mention. Andy? You're good?
All right, thank you. This next question will go to Denise and Andy. And also let me say, I will share the questions that are being asked tonight with the speakers, because I'm sure all of you would probably be interested in doing follow-up as you do your messaging out to the community, because these are issues that the community, your voters, are very interested in.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. We're going to move on to tax ramifications.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And we start on this one with Andy and Denise.
Okay. I'm going to let Andy take that on the taxes.
Okay, so let me ask the question. What are the tax implications for residents in the current Clarkdale, Jerome, and Cottonwood-Oak Creek districts if consolidation occurs?
As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, I strongly suggest that all voters review the voters' information pamphlet that we all received here into last week. And if you, I would refer you to pages 8 and 9. And you can see there was 4 different scenarios offered by the county school superintendent's office. Taxes, the bottom line is taxes will be going down in Clarkdale Jerome District and also the newly unified district. And as I mentioned before, that was a joint effort by several different agencies in the state that signed off on that. I don't want to get down in the specifics. Look at those 2 pages. If you have any questions, you can contact me at any time. But the bottom line is taxes will be going down in both districts.
Stephen.
He's right. That those are absolutely the estimates, that there's going to be a slight decrease in both of them. I'm going to refer when originally we thought that there was going to be a slight increase in Clarkdale Jerome, and the argument was, well, it's just such a little increase, it doesn't matter. That such a little increase that it doesn't matter has really turned into such a little decrease. Now, in all fairness, I think everyone would agree that a little decrease is absolutely better than a little increase. But those tax dollars ultimately do fund the schools, and I don't think that kind of hitting the self-destruct button on the current situation, kicking out Clarkdale Jerome, having those long-term educational and financial impacts for both the school district and the area's education, that a slight decrease in property taxes should be the reason to push forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll start with Amy and Stephen on this question. County Superintendent Tim Carter stated at a consolidation information meeting held on September 29 that the charts in the informational pamphlet consolidation plan are estimates only. As presented, there is an assumption that no matter what school district one's property is located in, the taxpayer, meaning the homeowner or business owner, will see a reduction in taxes. As the pamphlet is silent on the fact that students from Clarkdale-Jerome K-8 school district going into high school will be unable to attend without paying tuition, where will the Clarkdale-Jerome district obtain the revenues to pay for those tuitions? If those revenues are obtained through a bonding process, will that raise primary or secondary property taxes on residential and commercial properties? If so, does that mean a potential net increase in property taxes for households and businesses within the Clarkdale-Jerome School District?
2 minutes. So, first and foremost, that is correct. They are estimates. The tuitioning process is that instead of their money going directly to Mingus Union High School, it goes to the Clarkdale-Jerome School Board, and then that board gets to decide how that money is spent for the high school education. Whether it is tuitioning into Mingus, tuitioning in somewhere else, that would ultimately be a decision for that board to make. I think it's important to remember, though, that if they do decide to tuition in, they will not have a vote to say how that money gets spent. That once that money gets turned over to the new district, they will have zero say, zero ability to vote on the governance of it and how that money is spent. That being said, while there is the estimate that in year one, the taxes will go down, Tim Carter has also stated that the primary tax levy in Clarkdale-Jerome School District will double over the upcoming years. It's currently about $1 million. It'll go up to, it'll increase that much again. Now, how that individual taxing agency decides to deal with that, what they decide to do with that. Could they increase? Yes. Could they go down further? Yes. It is such a big unknown, but the fact is that primary tax levy is expected to increase. What that means for the individual homeowner or business owner is unknown. All we really have right now are the estimates that it's going to go down slightly in year one, and that the tax levy will increase in the following years.
Thank you.
I would like to mention on the question they asked about bonding. And bonding is for buildings and that type of spending. Overrides for schools have to do with programs, such as your music, your art, and other things that are subsidized through an override. So there's two different things going on in that. As far as the cost for students attending, Clarkdale students attending another high school, in this state, we have OPER in this community. I think it's a statewide open enrollment. And so you have students who are coming from Cottonwood going to Clarkdale-Jerome, and they get tuitioned over and vice versa. And those parents do not have anybody sitting on the school board to represent them. This is called choice, and that's how that works in the state of Arizona.
I just want to add to that is that, and Steve is correct, the taxes that Clarkdale's paying now is going to Mingus Union High School to educate those 9 through 12 students. And if a consolidation passes, then those dollars will be directed to the Clarkdale School Board. Keep in mind, we went to Clarkdale and asked them whether or not they wanted to be a part of this process, and their board declined. We respected their wishes. But Clarkdale board will have 17 different options, of which tuition and their students into Mingus is one option. There will be no tax increase. There will be a decrease. Those tuition dollars will be paid through school equalization and property taxes. And so there is none of the taxpayers in Clarkdale that tuition their students into the new district will have to write a check out of their own pockets to pay for tuition. That's coming from the district. Those dollars are already being spent today. It's the same dollars. It's a wash.
Thank you. We're now going to move on to curriculum and programs and away from finance. And we'll start with you, Denise and Andy. Will the proposed unified K-12 district offer a better education to the students? Please explain.
Okay. I believe I have 23 years in the field of education. Most of it's been in the Verde Valley. I have been a classroom teacher, which is probably the best job I've ever had. And I've had an opportunity to be a principal at the elementary level as well as at the middle school level. And what I would tell you is that I believe that by working together as a K-12 district and aligning our curricular instruction and our materials and in-servicing our teachers to teach using certain methodologies to deliver instruction will greatly improve. Almost all subjects have a certain technical vocabulary that has to be learned in order to go to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. And so I would say that I think that's a win-win for the districts.
I just may want to add to that the answer is definitely a big yes. There's no question when you have a larger system with more students, it gives that particular district the ability to offer more programs to the young people that are enrolled in that district. And so it is definitely an opportunity that we need to seize in this community. Our students deserve it. And as I said, the larger the district, the more programs that district can offer.
Thank you. Amy?
We keep hearing one of the benefits of consolidation is curricular alignment. And as a classroom teacher, I'm a little confused about where curricular misalignment took place. Because measures are set in motion by the state of Arizona, and districts align to Arizona state standards, and the expectation is that all public schools are curricularly aligned. I believe strongly that Mingus Union High School and Cottonwood-Oak Creek works very hard to ensure that their students are reaching those grade level and content level performance objectives, and that they are maintaining that alignment as set for the state. And so this idea of curricular misalignment is I don't see the foundation behind that statement.
Yeah, the statement that bigger is better is actually refuted by research. Research shows that smaller districts, smaller schools actually have students that perform better. So by saying that we're going to be able to give our students more by increasing the size of the district just doesn't match up with what studies have shown. Studies have repeatedly shown, one from the Rural School Association, and then Glendale did a similar study. Both showed the same thing. Smaller districts, smaller schools have better academic results, and that's why we want to save our independent districts, let them decide how their district should be run.
Okay, thank you. Another curriculum question, and this is specific. Several people in the community are asking about the effect on the music and arts and fine arts in our school systems with or without the consolidation, and we begin with Amy and Stephen.
I think the concern over those extracurricular programs boils down to those financial numbers. Based on analysis of budgets, it's apparent that there will be a shortfall of dollars in our consolidated district. And history has shown time and again that programs that are frequently first to be on the chopping block in order to save money and be able to run the district are those in the arts and the music. This is a concern that we have pushed up against multiple times, and we have fought valiantly to maintain those programs and build those programs, whereas other districts have chosen to take a different path.
The numbers we're looking at and the numbers we presented at the beginning show possible budget shortfalls, depending again on how the new board decides to do things, of $500,000 to $1 million. Now, if there are cuts to be made, if they need to find a place to come up with that money, Are they going to take it from math departments? Are they going to take it from English departments? Are they going to take it from those? No, they're going to take it from extracurriculars, non-core activities. And so when we talk about a fear, look back in 2008. 2008, just a decade ago, that we were looking at severe cuts to the arts and music programs, and it took a community effort to forestall those cuts, and thank God that they did, because we have some of the best theater and music programs in the state, and that's the fear, that if push comes to shove, core subjects aren't going to get cut. But those extracurricular ones that impact kids for years, for their lifetimes, those are going to be on the chopping block.
Thank you. Denise and Andy.
Sure. Did you want to go first? Okay. Well, I certainly hear the fear, and but I don't think that it's there. I mean, I understand the need feeling cautionary about it. I think that I know with Arizona tax credit that a lot of funding to those programs comes through donations from citizens in our community who love those programs and attend them. And many of them probably donate to that program to make it strong. And it's overrides pay for programs such as art, theater, and non-core subjects. And so I can kind of hear what Mr. Renard is saying and Ms. Badger, but I also feel like it's out there. It could be out there, I guess, if you wanted to look at it in that door. I'm looking in from another door, and I believe they're strong programs, and I believe this community supports those programs, and I believe that this community will continue to support those programs, whether we're two separate districts or if we went into a K-12 district.
We have shown many times where the cost savings could be achieved and be reallocated to programs like this. We're strong supporters of the fine arts program there at Mingus Union High School. There's no question it's a top-notch program. All that we're saying is with the savings involved is that we can grow that program, enhance those programs, and create new programs at the high school. And so it gives you a pot of dollars that to grow those programs and not to jeopardize those programs. So we want to make sure that those programs continue to exist and to get better. And in the consolidated district, they have the ability to go down into 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grades and develop a feeder program for those programs. Whatever the discipline is at the high school, you can develop a feeder program from the lower grades. So we think it's a win-win all the way around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question goes to Denise and Andy. What would be the changes in academic counseling services and health services with consolidation versus the current situation?
Now that was for health services?
And counseling services.
Counseling. Mm-hmm. Okay. At the high school, you have academic counselors, and they help our students lay out their four-year plan on how they're going to get through their studies and how they're going to achieve their goal of graduation. Of course, I'm sure those counselors, like most counselors, address other issues with students as well. But I don't see that as being a huge problem. I would say that goes back to the governing board and to the board that joins together to decide how this consolidated group new school would look. And they would make a list of priorities, and certainly we hope that that is at the top of the list for priority. Andy, you have anything you want to add?
The only thing that I may want to add is just given the COVID pandemic that we're experiencing right now, wouldn't it be nice if we had one district in the upper end of the Verde Valley? We have 3 separate school districts. Each one of those districts have a different program and protocol, when to start, when the students are online, when they can actually show up in class. And it would be, and we have families in this community that have children in all 3 districts. And so it's very difficult in families. So when we talk about health services provided, if we operated under one district, whatever the game plan is and the program that's rolled out to the community, it's unified, it's consistent, and it's what's best for not only the students, the parents, the community, the teachers, all parties involved.
Thank you. Stephen and Amy?
Acknowledging that the current health situation has been tough on a whole lot of people. I hesitate to state that a once-in-a-century health crisis should be the impetus for long-term change in how our schools are run. That being said, I think on par, you're probably going to see a wash when it comes to health and counseling services. And the one thing, if there are federal dollars attached, many federal statutes do say that certain dollars have to be spent at the earliest possible point. So you may see possibility, it's a likelihood because it's a federal law, that you're going to see money which is currently being spent on high school students being switched over to being spent on younger students. And there's going to be a gap before those younger students receiving those dollars would make it all the way up to high school. So you're going to have kind of this lost group who would not necessarily receive the same dollars per head spending that you have with the independent districts as you do now.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Stephen and Amy again. There seems to be a downward trend at our high school in the percent of students passing the required state assessments. This is concerning to many in our community. Since 2015, Mingus Union High School students have had a lower percentage on the state required assessment compared to our feeder school districts. As a consolidated district with a single mission statement, an uninterrupted pre-K through 12 curriculum, and a single administration, will this provide an environment for better student outcomes? Why or why not?
There's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to say no. Could it? Yes. Do I think it will? No. And here's why. This point got brought up earlier, that there was a decrease in the percent passing from Cottonwood-Oak Creek and Clarkdale-Jerome to Mingus. I don't have a specific number here, but in looking at other groups, the overall, that tends to happen. You have fewer high school students from their feeder schools passing. I would say that the tests they're taking in high school are probably on par, harder, more difficult than the ones that they are taking in elementary schools. I also believe, and don't get me wrong, we need to improve those scores. There is the issue with the state of Arizona has changed what test we're taking 3 times in the past several years. They were changing it again last year before the COVID crisis hit and the schools shut down. So the lack of consistency, the lack of really knowing what that test is going to look like, how they score it, what those are going to be, does pose a problem. I think a better way of looking at whether or not Mingus is doing its job is how the state compares us to our peer group. They take schools similarly situated socioeconomic areas and they compare them. And Mingus in math, English language arts, and science beats academically its peer group year after year.
Thank you. Denise and Andy.
When I'm looking at the auditor report, General, that's correct, Mr. Renard. As far as their peer group, they don't meet the state expectation as far as that goes, though. And so I think that might be what that question is pointing to. I don't know, but that could be a part of it. And true is the fact that the state is all over the place, all over the map when it comes to deciding how they're going to assess student learning and achievement, and what level of accountability that looks like. However, once again, I would just like to bring it back that if we have a curriculum or a curriculum director or somebody who's in charge of aligning instruction from K through 12, then in segments or increments, you have continuity that would take that. I'm lead that up all the way through the high school years. So again, I understand that we have state standards, they're real broad, and we have state concepts and objectives, and those, boy, I'll tell you, that'll put you to sleep at night, but, am I right? Yeah, and so, you know, we've all worked with those things, but when you go and buy, I can give you a quick example. When we were gonna have math taught at the middle school to get our advanced math students ready to go up to the high school, we went to Mingus. We hadn't worked out this exchange yet where they were accepting students for algebra class. And they had a different textbook than we had. And so they wanted us to buy their textbook so that we could have those kids doing the correct curriculum, correct? Okay, so we're gonna do that. Well, we had a certified teacher who is certified 7 through 12. And so he had the credential to teach that class. He's a math teacher. But when those students transferred to Mingus, that credit went in as an elective. It did not go in as a math algebra class. So that's where there's a disconnect.
Thank you. The next question is rather general in nature. Some have said that it is not the right time to consider consolidation because school districts have enough to do to navigate the education of the kids during the time of COVID-19. Would you agree or disagree, and why? And we'll start with Andy and Denise.
Well, I would disagree with that. I kind of appreciate what Stephen said earlier. I mean, how often are we hope not often, we're gonna have pandemics like this, right? But I think today is the day. I felt like when we walked the community and talked to people in the community that people were looking at that, and I think they're ready for that. I think that the community, as I started out today at the beginning of this, talking about our history, and how our communities looked, how they moved to where we are today. I feel like the pandemic is not an excuse to do this, but I don't feel like it's an excuse to not do this.
I just want to say that when we started this process, it was 3.5, almost going on 4 years now. And so just because COVID-19 pandemic set upon us, it's a terrible situation for all of us to be in. This is the time to give our voters, the registered voters in these districts, a chance to vote to consolidate these districts. And we've been working at this for several years. There's thousands of people out there. When we had our petitions out there in the community, that most of them thought, why aren't we unified? Why aren't we consolidated? And so the time is now. The time is for the community is to step up and vote yes for consolidation.
Thank you.
Yes, I do think it's important to vote, especially for Clarkdale residents, because this may be their final opportunity that they'll get to vote if consolidation passes. I think we cannot ignore the fact that we are isolating an entire group of our union from our community. And I know that Andy has said multiple times, we asked them to join and they declined, and we respected that. And to be fair, he asked Mingus Union High School as well, and we declined as well. And so did Cottonwood-Oak Creek. They declined as well. And yet that decision was not appropriate. So whereas Clarkdale's decision was respected, the other two districts were not able to validate their opinion.
Thank you. The next question. It has been pointed out by several sources that consolidation would cause the new consolidated district to lose Prop 301 monies because they would no longer be able to count Clarkdale-Jerome students. If this is true, where do those dollars for those high school students go? And we'll start with Stephen and Amy.
So this point was brought up. We reached out to a financial expert. The initial statement was that ADM, which is separate from tuition students, is responsible for how they calculate 301. So if you reduce ADM, you reduce 301. that later came back to us, and on our Facebook page, we actually posted, hey, listen, we were incorrect. Because I think, again, it's important that the voters have all the facts. The 301 money does follow the student. It does attach to that. There are other ADM monies, such as Forest Service funds, that do not count the tuitioned students as what I know. But the 301 doesn't. Now, when we're talking about 301, it is important to understand that this is one of the things I brought up at the beginning, that if you pool all the 301 money for all the teachers, what's going to happen is you're going to have an increase in 301 to the elementary school district teachers and a decrease in 301 monies to the high school teachers. Again, absolutely, Cottonwood-Oak Creek School District teachers are underpaid. But the correct way to do this, the correct way to fund this, is through action at the state level and by talking to the boards directly. It is not sitting there and taking money from one underpaid group and giving it to a slightly more underpaid group. And that's what this plan would do. It would take those $301 from the underpaid high school teachers and it would give it to the underpaid elementary school teachers.
Thank you. Denise and Andy.
Thank you. The 301, I have the numbers on here on this auditor's form. The thing with 301 is it's a tax-generated funds. So that is going to look different every year anyway. I mean, it's fluid, it's flexible, it goes up and down. I heard what Mr. Renard said. I hear what he's saying. It's also supposed to be merit-based. There are certain expectations that are done according to how that is written, 301 is written, that it's merit-based, and for that performance. Another thing mentioning, though, like the state coming in and pitching in funds, the state already does that. We're talking here about public schools, schools that are funded by our community. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about being the taxpayers in this community, kicking in money to educate the students of this community, all these communities. So I don't know that equitability is going to come from expecting the state to step up and do what we as taxpayers are expected to do for our teachers and our community and our students, especially our students. So, do you want to add to that?
301 is, as has been shared with you, is based on merit and performance of the individual teacher. The money follows the student, as Stephen says. It's up to the new governing board to determine how those dollars will be spent. I know in the past when I served on the Mingus board, the board at that time tried to make it a merit performance-based protocol, but it was much easier to just take the X number of teachers and divide it into the pot of money, and I think they still do that today. And so that kind of defeats the purposes of $301. But to answer the question, yes, it follows the students, so there's no adverse impact to the new district, and the money follows the kids.
Thank you. We've reached the end of the community questions, and so now we will move into closing statements. We will begin with those that are in support of the consolidation, Andy Grosetta and Denise Kennedy, and you have 2 minutes to make your closing statements.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Going back to what Amy had to say about the residents of Clarkdale being disenfranchised, that's been something that has been really a concern to all of us. And one part of it is this: all of us are represented through our governing boards. And so when we approach the governing boards in Clarkdale, because they are the cute little community school they are, and they asked for this, and they get small school funding allocation, which they would have lost had they come into the consolidation of Mingus and Cottonwood-Oak Creek. So I think it's important that there's clarity on that. And I think it's also important to know that Clarkdale Jerome, and every one of these students are precious. They've been my nieces and my grandchildren, but they have attended Mingus through coming from Clarkdale Jerome District, and that the district has paid, would continue to pay that tuition, which is a combination of local property tax and funding through the state. That's where the state kicks in the money. And so I just hope that people will take those things into consideration. No person in Clarkdale is going to have to write a check out to pay for their child to go to a high school. That is not how that funding looks. Andy?
Part of our closing statement, yes, vote yes on consolidation. It creates a unified pre-K through 12 district for families and students, allows for both horizontal and vertical curriculum alignment for pre-K through 12 curriculum, which will improve student academic achievement, streamlines the administrative and operational efficiencies which could be applied towards equalization of teacher salaries. Clarkdale and Jerome and the new unified districts experience a reduction in property taxes. That's a big plus. Creates one governing board in the new district, and Clarkdale Jerome maintains their independent school district and their own governing board. Please vote yes on consolidation.
Thank you. And now we will go to Amy Badger and Stephen Renard for closing statements.
So in looking at this, what's the problem? Pro-consolidation group says the problem is we need more dollars in the classroom. We need better paid teachers. I agree, 100%. Their solution is to cut 10 to 15% from administrative costs, cut 10 to 15% from plant operations, and boom, $600,000 to $700,000, like that. Where does consolidation come into that? How does consolidation affect plant operation costs? It doesn't. That money, and frankly, if there's 10 to 15% to be cut from these budgets, I demand that that happen right now. If there is 10 to 15% that Cottonwood-Oak Creek or Mingus Union High School can cut from its plant operations, why aren't they doing it now? If they can cut their administrative costs by 10 to 15%, why aren't they doing it now? Because the money's not there. The money isn't there. We're utilizing it. People are working their butts off to run as mean and lean as possible and do the best by our kids. Voting is important. They reference that, oh, this is the same thing as if a Cottonwood student were to go to Clarkdale Jerome and they have a choice, it's school choice. This vote would take away the choice from Clarkdale Jerome students. It takes away their vote. They would no longer have a choice of whether or not to send their student to the school they get to vote for, like a Cottonwood student would. It takes it away. Governance is important. The governance, the ability to determine and ultimately vote someone out if you don't like how they're running your kid's school, Clarkdale Jerome loses that. Better does not mean bigger. Follow the facts, follow the research. It's better for our students, it's better for our communities, it's better for our schools. Vote no. And thank you so much for your time, and thank you guys for coming here as well.
Absolutely.
Too.
And in conclusion, I would like to thank the speakers this evening, Denise Kennedy, Andy Grosetta, Stephen Renard, and Amy Badger for being here and participating in this forum. I also want to remind everyone to please vote on November 3rd in the general election. Today is the last day to register. You've got till midnight. And the ballots will start being mailed out on October 7th. So thank you all for coming and for sharing your wisdom and insight.
If you don't know where to go to register, you go to the MVD website and you can register there with your driver's license. Register, vote.
Or you can go to servicearizona.com.
There you go.
Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.